Shannon, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Shannon Bray. I'm currently a candidate for the U.S. Senate out of the state of North Carolina. I have roughly 30 years of experience in information technology. I've done everything from software development to blockchain development, management in between. I've ran a couple IT companies. And I worked for Microsoft, wrote a couple books. So the IT space is pretty much where I've made my my living most of the time. I am a combat vet from Desert Storm, but I'm also old now, so I'm feeling the aches and the pains of just trying to be a dad of 3 kids and a crazy wife. That pretty much sums me up.
I won't tell her you said that. Just clip that and send it to her.
She'll expect it, I'm sure, today.
So have you heard about the Michael Ho thing with the Green Party, that he was like shafted?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
That was an interesting story all the way around. Because I was one of the people who signed his ballot to petition to get on the ballot. Because I believe that that everyone should be represented and that there shouldn't be so many hurdles, to get on the ballot. But with Matthew, he had to get, 13,000 signatures, and they ended up getting like 16,000. He was on the ballot, and then the Democratic Party came in and they started saying that, it wasn't even, not only were they saying the signatures weren't valid, they were calling people at their house and harassing them, talking about the importance of this election, and that they should consider removing their name from that petition. And then they asked, would you like me to remove your name right now? And they actually called the president of the Green Party, and he recorded it. So, it's all if it's not out in the open now, it'll all be out there soon. But then Matthew he was going to court. The poor guy's been getting money, but he's got no money in his campaign like me, because he had to spend it all on lawyers and whatnot. But at least he's on the ballot now. The nice thing about everything that's happened to him is I knew who he was. Well, I knew who he was anyway. We have mutual friends. But he's gotten a lot of news coverage, right? With the whole Democrats, and the Republicans really should have picked up on this and used it as like the Democrats are trying to control, right? But they didn't. I expected Fox News to pick up on it too, but they didn't. But to me, it was just a missed opportunity to them. By the time they hear about it, it's almost resolved. But yeah, it was going to go to court, and then it got all of a sudden the Democratic Party folded. They were talking about how the signatures were faked and but there was no proof given. It's almost like all that stuff they said about Trump, about Matthew.
Rigged elections.
Yes. And we're talking, so in a reality, this is what we're talking about, right? Matthew, he might get 3, he might get half my votes, I don't know. But he might make 3, 4, 5%. But as a third party, it's so hard to beat the duopoly, right? You've got the Republicans and the Democrats. See, the weird thing is the Democrats didn't really care about me running. Well, it's hard to stop me because I'm a libertarian and we're established on the ballot. But they were actually funding my campaign last time behind the scenes on some, literature they were sending all over North Carolina, talking about how Tom Tillis would vote for red flag laws. I happen to agree with their message, and I appreciate them for sending flyers out through everyone. And as it turned out, my statements on Mr. Tillis were correct, but they play dirty politics in the state. I saw it originally when I ran last time, and now I'm seeing it here. But they were so focused on Matthew, they've kind of lost scope of a lot of what the Republicans and stuff are pulling off. Because right now you have Ted Budd, who he might show up to a debate, but I doubt it, because he's already locked in the Republican vote. He was Trump's golden child. He didn't debate the rest of the Republicans, right? And he beat them. They're all like, debate us, right? And Ted's like, no, I'm Trump's dude. And it paid out. So you have that on the Republican side. Then you got the Democrats sitting there pissing all over the Green Party on their side. If people don't understand how screwed up politics is, you just got to take a look at North Carolina.
Yeah, this seems like a perfect example that should be in all of the news agencies to bring this to the forefront of international attention so that we can really start to reform how corrupt our politics is. The fact that Fox News didn't pick up on this, it's so telling, because it means that the reason they didn't is probably because we know the Republicans also do this probably all over the different countries. So they just call hypocrite up and down, because it's so corrupt in the way that our political parties are run with this these two-party systems.
The Republican Party was funding last year a Democrat's commercials so that she would beat the Democrat golden child, right? So they were trying to fund someone who didn't quite cut it. But you don't see that until you are in the mix. You see everything's going. You're watching Open Secrets. You're talking to the candidate and you're debating. Hey, you said you weren't taking money, but you just got $1 million from here. And they're like, oh, I didn't know where that came from. That was the Republican Party. Okay. So if she's telling the truth, that's messed up. If she's lying, that's messed up. So it doesn't really matter. But yeah, North Carolina politics is it's interesting. We've seen ballots thrown away by Democrats. We see more Republicans involved in voter fraud than I think anybody, and nobody knows this. But if you can look, you go back and you hit Google, all the stories are there. No one's just ever said, hey, just look at North Carolina only and see how screwed up they are.
Yeah. Wow. So tell me more about your platform. Why are you running? What are you hoping to change?
Well, the first thing I'm hoping to change is the power of the duopoly for obvious reasons. But there's a lot of things that are close to my heart. So I'm a vet. So all of the veteran services and things like that, the failure of the VA, the over prescription of these cocktails that with side effects of depression and suicide, are the reasons why we're killing our vets. I'm very pro marijuana, primarily because I'd like to see it unscheduled and then prescribed to the vets, get them off the opioids, get them off of whatever is messing up a lot of their brains. And it's a lot cheaper. So and then it also helps North Carolina because, we're growing hemp here, very successfully, and, just to add another cash crop to it would be great. So that's kind of the string of things that more people outside of me care about. But I work for DOD, as an adult, doing their cybersecurity. So I've also worked with DOD on some of their budgeting things. So I know where money goes, how it gets put under other things so that they get to keep their funding. DOD and overspending is one of the big things that I'm looking to tear apart. Also campaign financing. Pretty much anything that is against the individual voter. because my entire platform is on personal liberty, right? I don't think that, well, no one has a right to come into my house and tell me what to do, period. But the problem is do I even own my house? If I don't pay my property taxes, even after my house is paid off, the government can come in and take my house from me at gunpoint, throw me in jail. So they also have weaponized the tax service. So we can talk about that in Biden's new plan on where they're getting all of these IRS agents. You know, the IRS agents shoot more ammo than the FBI. I heard that on the news the other morning. I was like, what? And now you want all of these people, where are they going to get all of this money? They're going to go find it from us. Sorry, there's so many screwed up things going on in my head right now. It's hard to stay focused. Oh yeah, so I'm also against the IRS, but I'm also against most government practices, because I'd like to see a small, decentralized government actually, that is here for the people. And speaking of decentralization, that's my other big topic, because then that gets us into the crypto world. You know, how DAOs and stuff can actually help humanity, and they can do it a lot better than the government. We can pay for education. We can pay for roads. I mean, a DAO's already bought the Constitution. A DAO's already bought, what was that? I can't remember that album, but it was a big deal. There's so much power in crypto. So that's another passion I have.
Cool. Tell me more about so the IRS and the Department of Defense. So one of the other people I had on suggested that we actually fund the IRS more, and this is a good thing so that they can target larger industries. And one of the possible avenues would be to have the IRS do an audit on the DoD, and that could be a potential way to try and fix the terrible spending habits of the DoD. What are your thoughts on that?
No, IRS is bad. I mean, they're shooting more than the FBI. Who are they shooting? Who are they practicing for? More agents just means that every time they have all these stupid little tax laws, everyday people are going to get audited like crazy. They're going to have to pay their salaries. And these people, when they're brought on, they have mandates. So they have to find the money somewhere. And when you're bringing on people like that have to find money, you know who's going to pay for it? It's not the guys who can afford the lawyers. They're going to come after the people who can't afford the lawyers. And so it's going to be common people. So the taxes that Biden's not raising are going to go up substantially. The IRS, I think, is just a bad system. I mean, we didn't have a tax system up until it was time to fund World War I. And then they started doing the income tax. And all of a sudden now they're just taking money from all over the place. Like, oh, yep, boom. We're not being represented in that. We're not even get to pick it. The taxes they're going to throw us on this, they're calling it an anti-inflation bill, but yet they're hiring more people for the IRS. They take all of these good ideas and they put them into a shit sandwich, and then they give it a really cool title. That way, when someone says, "Oh no, I don't want to vote for that." Oh, you don't want to vote for Save the Children? Well, no, because look at all this toxic stuff that's in the middle. Oh, you're a terrible person. And then on the commercials next year, it's like, Shannon didn't want to save the children. And everybody's like, go to hell, go to hell, go to hell, right? And that's our political system in a nutbag.
Well, what about the counter argument that the IRS targets middle-income families because they don't have the finances to be able to challenge the large industries in court? And if we did fund them more, then we could actually go after the larger people who are doing more tax evasion.
No, you're not going to get they already are armed for the larger ones. I mean, Elon's already said they have a whole team just for him. So it's where the rich are still going to play the loopholes, because see, the loopholes are legal. It's okay because they know the loopholes, and they're having accountants that do everything, and they're doing everything as legal and shady as they can. So the mandates aren't going to come from Amazon, who didn't pay any taxes. Don't you think if you say Amazon didn't pay any taxes the last couple of years, don't you think that they should be sending people over and figuring out how Amazon did that? Because I had to pay taxes, and they hurt, right? It's not, you don't arm the IRS to come after big people. You arm the IRS to come after us, the little people, the people who can't. I mean, the attorney I'm going to have is going to be assigned to me by TurboTax because I hit that checkbox at the end of every year because I'm scared to hell the IRS is going to come after me. But if I have a lawyer, it's going to be a lot better. If you don't have a lawyer, they take everything.
So what do you think about the European system where the government just sends you a bill and says, here's what you pay, and as long as it looks right, you could check it, but if not, you just pay it, and so you don't have to do all this TurboTax stuff?
Well, I'm against taxes anyway. I mean, taxes in general. We pay. So Biden got elected. 13 people died in Afghanistan, service members. Our immediate response after they said it would take weeks and months of figuring out what happened. The next day they bombed a family, a guy and his kids. And I'm tired of paying for that stuff. DOD spends more money than we can afford just in itself. And we're not talking about all of the other departments. The government is running us into the ground, and they just keep taking more and more and more. And we're heading to a socialist path, whether we elect socialists or not, because everything is costing us more money. What I'd like to see is us to have like an opt-in system, right? Look, do you guys want to pay for this? Yes, I want to pay for that. And if you don't get enough people to pay for it, it doesn't happen, right? It should be, yes, I want to opt into this, I believe in this, or no, I'd like to opt out of bombing brown children overseas just for the oil. I mean, you can't tell me it's anything else.
Well, what about the argument that if we're trying to compete with governments that have forced tax systems and we have like an opt-in system, we wouldn't be able to fund as many programs as they can, and they'll have a significant advantage militarily, financially, economically. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, if we were serious about improving the country, we would stop getting in everybody else's business. Right? If we're not sitting there spying and doing all this other meddling and then training and then having all the weapons that we just give to people away, if we just stop wasting all this money, then we wouldn't have homeless vets at all. Probably wouldn't have homeless people. We should be spending more effort on taking care of actual country than we spent more money in just the Biden thing all over the place. I mean, you got the Russia-Ukraine thing, money spent. Like, oh yeah, but there are children too. But the kids in Africa aren't our children? You know, you can't just pick who we're going to help and why we're going to help, and it costs me money. I don't want my money going to Ukraine. Now, I asked my kids if they believed in it so much, I was willing to go fight there, but I don't want their legacies having to pay for war debts of other people. Sorry, I got off track a little bit, but
That's fine. Do you have any examples of countries that implement a model like what you're advocating for that are really successful in what they do? Because my concern would be that it doesn't seem like there are any major countries that are operating in the way that you're suggesting, and I would be concerned that the way you're suggesting may have a disadvantage compared to the current system.
well, no one's doing it, but that's all because of the expansionism of, you know, the governments and the countries. And so there's very little place that's not owned by someone. And, you know, with the United States being the home of the free, you know, we have a lot less laws than people have. But, I mean, there's islands out in the Caribbean that are, you know, owned by the Queen of England. And, you know, she doesn't know anything about them, right? Never been there, not represented. But representation and taxation, I mean, that's why we jumped the pond and came over here to begin with. But just because there aren't countries that aren't like that doesn't mean that they can't be successful, because all that does is take the power from the government and it gives it to the people. But we're never going to get, and even if you had 20 of me, like we'd spend our entire lives just fixing the broken laws that have been done. We wouldn't get to restart everything. But what we would try to do is start releasing everybody on, felony marijuana charges that had no weapons or anything like that. Non-violent crimes, let those people out. Let's make the jails smaller. There's so many things that is costing us so much money, and it's not helping. I don't know anybody who came out of jail like, oh yeah, I'm a better person for it. Yay, here's my certificate. But it's because they're not set up that way. It's not made to be a success program. It's where we throw people to forget about people. We're trying to get some basketball player out of Russia for drug charges, but yet I got people all, in jails all around me who had a lot less than that, and no one's fighting for them. So I don't know.
How would we
Go ahead.
How would we reform the prison system to make it more about success? What would we do to change it to make it more better for lower the recidivity rate? Is that what it's called?
Well, the first thing is we got to change the laws. They're written to be you can pretty much pin anything on anyone at any time, lock them up, and then hope that due process gets them out. Right now, the police departments and all of that have to throw people into jail to make money. It is a business. Throwing people in jail should not be a business. But then, even with our current system, because it's going to be really hard to change all the local things like that. But then you also have different things that you can do with the prisoners and the work outreach programs and things like that make them self-sustainable, right? So that, because they say, so-and-so was taken off death row, and it's, or death row costs, $10 million a person. Why? Where's that spending going? I want to see where all that money's going on why it costs that much money to keep somebody up in a cage until you kill them. Because I got 3 kids and I could raise them for a lot cheaper than that. But I don't know.
I hear that's like mostly legal fees, like the legal fees to go back to the case, because there's like several appeal cases that are required. And so you're paying for the judges and the attorneys and the people, the everyone involved in the court case who are investigating it for the entire duration of the whatever 8 or whatever appeals they go through, and the cumulative case for all of that, as well as the housing and things and police officers, adds up to that amount or something along those lines.
Yeah, but then you still have people that after they put to death, they're found innocent. Even after all of that, right? So, there's some people that I would agree, but I'm anti-death penalty too, because we can't get shit right. We just pin anything on any scapegoat we think we can, and hope that they can't beat us. That's the way our legal system works now.
So could you give me some specifics of things you would change? What laws or implementations would you make to make the system better?
Well, the first thing we would do is pretty much kind of what they did in Oregon, make all drugs legal. Primarily, so that people who actually have problems will get help. When I was a kid, I circled around a lot of places, right? And I know for a fact that people would just, if they think somebody OD, they just run, right? And then nobody stays to help that person because of the legal issues that are around it. It would, if everything is at least legal at smaller levels, people would help other people in situations like that, or not, throw them into a dumpster, which I've heard of as well. So that's one of the things. But another thing is I'm very much for the Second Amendment. In fact, any gun law to me is unconstitutional. I think felons who have served their time and they're off and they're done, they should have all of their rights back, because the Constitution wasn't written for 21 and over. In fact, I'm against any sort of laws that children have no rights anymore, right? They don't get freedom of speech. They're subject to their parents, but even other adults, they don't treat children as entities of freedom. With your own kid, that's your own thing. But by and large, children, their rights aren't examined either.
For sure. We got a question from the audience. How can you take care of prisoners better, but with less money, less funding?
Well, we wouldn't lock so many people up. Nonviolent crimes and drugs, though, you could do house arrest with the little monitoring systems, the GPS. It works for my dog, right? And then you can, put people out there. And then they're sitting there paying their rent. They're buying their own food. They're doing everything as long as they stay in the confinement. Now, if they don't, they want to keep bailing, throw them in jail and keep them there for a while, make them learn a lesson. But there's a lot of different things that you can do. But there's also a lot of mismanagement of money that gets put into these prison systems. That's the part that you would have to really kind of go after. When you're watching like A&E and they go into the funding and stuff of all these prisons, you just realize that they're just businesses to lock people up. And if they don't, then they can't afford people. Everything shuts down. And then they get federal funding, more of my tax money to keep things alive that shouldn't be alive, because they shouldn't have so many people in jail. I think we have more people in jail, just the U.S., than everyone else in the world. I think I saw.
For sure. But how are you going to audit those? Isn't the whole point of having the IRS to be able to do those kinds of audits and find the financial misgivings of the prison system? So don't you think we should keep the IRS but make it more like an executive branch thing that's only internal with the government or primarily?
Why keep the IRS? The only time they folded for Scientology, right? They said, you're not a church, until all of their members just kept harassing the IRS, and they finally folded. It's a government-controlled agency that can be used by the government to inflict their will on the people. And no, it shouldn't be a government at all. It shouldn't be an agency at all.
So you would create a new agency to do the audits on the finances of the DOD and the prison systems?
To start with, but ultimately all that stuff be on the blockchain. Once we actually start moving technology into things, I want to see ranked choice voting nationwide on the blockchain. If people don't like ranked choice voting, then everything should be on the blockchain. Budgets, and it can still be encrypted and coded so general people can't get to it, but the information needs to be there so it's readable by people who do have access to it, and it needs to be able to make sure that they're not able to change it. But then when you start looking at budgets and smart contracts and things like that, we won't even need most of the people in the government. In fact, in the world that I'm dreaming in, we're probably going to get rid of most of the House and the Senate, because we can all tally up our votes and get represented, using our cell phones now. That whole government system that we currently have is archaic.
Another question from the chat. How would you fund the government without the IRS and taxes?
Oh, I would make the government a lot smaller.
Well, so if there's no taxes, the government gets no money. How would you get any money?
Well, the government's always going to get money, right? Because they have, if they stop taxes on us right now, they got over 20 billion just in crypto in California, right? The government doesn't have a problem with money. Well, yeah, they do. They just keep printing it anyway. So it's not like we're sitting here on a balanced budget. What we should be doing is stop having the citizens pay for everything that the government and their widespread control want. I mean, there's a lot of these other bills that have passed lately that sound great, but all it comes down to the taxes. Even the CARES Act for America or medical marijuana. We're going to deschedule it and all of this. But if you actually read the bill, they make more laws than they cleaned up, so that they can arrest people for not paying their taxes. You know who they're going to use for that? The new IRS agents they have. So you're going to have guns coming in to drug locations, knowing that there may be a conflict, right? Because if you come running into my house, you got guns, I don't know what's going to happen. But the IRS does, because they're going to kick in your door.
Well, so
with
like
guns.
the data I've read shows that the government gets like $4 trillion in taxes. How could you possibly make up that amount without taxes?
Okay, so say that we don't go all the way tax free. Let's just say that we lighten the burden of the American taxpayer by 50%. Right? That is substantial to the taxpayers, and then helps us reduce the size of the government. And then when we get there, we decide whether or not we still have agencies that are costing us money. Because there's a lot of agencies. I mean, the fact that we have 16 or 17 different intelligence agencies that don't talk to each other, don't you think that's a big deal?
Yes, I think there's lots of very bad things.
I mean, the NSA doesn't talk to the FBI. They're in two separate jurisdictions. The FBI doesn't talk to anybody. The FBI is probably one of the biggest terrorist organizations we've ever seen. I mean, you have Waco, which some people were like, it was like a religious thing. But then you have so many other things where they've just gone in and just murdered families. So for no reason. And then in the end, they're found like, it was the FBI's fault. But we still got dead kids and stuff over here. The FBI, I grew up thinking they were like our federal police and everyone was great. But everyone's following political agendas, and we're not able to set what those agendas are.
So I think the military budget, makes up 17% of the budget of the U.S. government, or like discretionary spending or something. And the vast majority of spending is from healthcare, Social Security, Medicaid, welfare, those kinds of things. Would you cut those as well?
You don't just go in and just like cut everything all at once. Where I would start is basically DOD, right, and the IRS, and start cutting those particular programs, because that's where the gross of our spending is, right? Our spending isn't taking care of our elderly. I think that they are entitled to it because they were in a contract with the United States government, and they said, if I give you this much money, when I need it, you're going to take care of me. The government promised them that. So no, I think that we have to honor those kind of agreements. But if we stop dropping millions of dollars of cash in pallets in the Middle East, all of that money adds up. And we do it a lot. Goes out of a C-130 out of the back, along with like ammo and, health supplies and just whatever. But these are all just, you can call it humanity packages all you want, but it's just all costing us money. I'd like to cut that out. It's not like I want to necessarily go, I do believe that some taxes are good because they help my community, and there are things that I would opt in for. There's plenty of other things I would opt in just because I like it. Things that the government was doing. If they were still using NASA the way they used to, that would be something that I would be, really excited about participating in, because it gives you ownership of stuff. But I just don't want ownership of what the government's doing now. I mean, I love my country, but I can't stand my government.
But the military budget's only like 10 to 15% of government spending. So how would you, because that's not a significant amount if you really want to like cut taxes 50%, say.
Is that DOD? Are you saying
What?
DoD, or are you just saying the military in general?
All military, all military. So not just the Department of Defense. So that's like the entire military budget of the federal government is about 15 to 16% of everything they spend.
Well, then we have to figure out where the rest of the money is being spent.
80% of it goes to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment, those kinds of things. The social services. That's like 80% of the budget is all stuff to
Oh,
help
that
people.
might be where it's earmarked, but that's not necessarily where it's going.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, like because it's mismanaged. Gotcha.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of things that we can go in there and clear up. In fact, I don't want to bring the blockchain back into it, but if companies now are starting to run their workflows off blockchain, insurance companies, and all of them, we can run our government off of it. We have so much red tape all over the place because of random ass policies. You know, when I was working for the DoD, I had like 20 bosses, and they just kind of went all over the place. And depending on what task I was on, I had a different boss. Half the time they weren't even there. So there, it's not just just go in one day and fix it. I mean, we have to go in there and actually have people who don't want that agency around, and they dig up enough stuff to see if they can prove whether or not they're corrupt. And if they are, you got to get rid of them.
Gotcha. Question from Bobo: what are your thoughts on Medicare for all?
I think it's a terrible idea. And to kind of explain why is because I'm a veteran. I've used the VA. The VA is the worst thing that is really kind of ever happened. So for those who don't know, pretty much when you come out of the military, if you have any service related injury, you go to the VA for everything. They overprescribe you. They run you in and out. It's hard I've been trying to see the VA now for like 6 months, and like the day before, my appointment keeps getting canceled for some stupid reason, and then I gotta like start all over. So if you can't take care of America's 1% using the government, which is supposed to be really good healthcare, how are you going to take care of the other 99%? We can't.
So, question about the blockchain thing. Several people in the audience are asking, you wanted to put these things on the blockchain. What do you mean by that? How did we put something on the blockchain? Like, for example, federal spending. If we put prison spending on the blockchain, how would that change anything? Because it's essentially, we know the money's going to them and we know they're misusing it. How would putting it on the blockchain change that? We still just know they're doing it in the same way.
Right. Well, all a blockchain is just a ledger. Right. So it would just be a mutable ledger, which means it can't be changed. Any paper ledger that you have can be altered, doctored, they can erase a zero, add this, cook the books, right? You can't cook the blockchain. It's transparent, it's immutable, and if you change one thing in a blockchain, everything after it is unusable. You can't do that with accounting records. I can go in there and change a little zero and nobody knows.
Well, from my knowledge that there aren't a lot of people cooking books, for example, in prisons. They're misusing money and everyone knows they're misusing money and nobody cares. And so even if we put it on a blockchain, it's still the same thing. They're just misusing money. So
well, right. But at least then when you go after them and you see that they're misusing it, it won't disappear. Right, the information won't just be flushed down a toilet, like Trump's being accused of right now. You can't flush the blockchain, right? So you can't get rid of the evidence. If they're misusing it, we find out about it. There it is. So it's still good. Now it would be nice to find, to maximize the efficiency of it, but at least we're capturing the data.
How would we put government spending on a blockchain? And wouldn't that compromise a lot of things that might be confidential uses of money for the government?
Well, classify. I mean, you can still classify it. It may not be open to like you or me, Well, it would be open to, at this point, whoever our representatives are. That should be one of the things that they're doing is looking into the budgets of agencies and all of that, and then possibly, letting their constituents really kind of help them vote for what we want versus not, versus political stuff. That would be their job, is to make sure that we're not being abused at the financial level. But that's where all of the special interests and stuff come in, and we lose our representatives to money. So the whole system's corrupt.
Gotcha. Got another question from the audience from Jay Ritchie. Can you name any large organizations that are running on blockchain in this method?
Yeah. Microsoft. They also have Coca-Cola. I think I'll get a list of workflows, because there's a couple insurance agencies and stuff that I was looking to see how they did it originally. But then I found that the Microsoft has an API for a blockchain, so they have a whole department that's all blockchain. But then they also work with Coca-Cola to do theirs.
So when you say an API, like, do they actually check all of their transactions based on the blockchain, or just like a project they're working on?
No, it's fully interactive with the blockchain. You can interact with it with Python or really any sort of language.
No, I mean, like, is there any company that is currently using a blockchain in order to check all of their different financial asset transactions and are doing it successfully?
Oh, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Cool. How would we implement a blockchain at the federal level? How would we make that a thing?
Well, a blockchain is, and I'm getting ready to record a video sometime this week that kind of explains it a little better, but all a blockchain is a group of data that's been hashed so that you know what's in that data. Now, this data can be encrypted, or it can be in plain text, or it could be it can be a picture, right? Like an NFT or whatever. But it gets hashed. Now, it has to get a very specific hash that matches the pattern. So that requires a lot of processing time. That hash is now used in the next block. So that information gets hashed, but it gets hashed with this hash. So then you have another unique hash. So it just keeps going. It's just data that is hashed upon the data before it. But then if you mess up anything, it just shuts down the whole, everything's wrong.
But can't blockchains be hacked in some cases? Because I've heard some instances that, like, there's one certain cryptocurrency that got the vast majority of its stuff stolen. And later they like completely revert to a previous instance of the blockchain.
Well, depending on who implements the blockchain, and because each blockchain's its own thing. You do have you have the Bitcoin blockchain, and then you have the Doge blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain. All of those are the blockchains themselves, but then you have tokens that live upon those, like, the SHIB and Terra, and Luna C is the one, or Luna is the one that just tanked the other, month. I think the guy just picked up all the liquidity and ran. So there's problems in the currency, the issues, so you have to do your own research, lots of scams and stuff, but that's not on blockchain. I mean, it is on blockchain technology, but that's not really a factor in how successful blockchain will be in our future. This is just the monetization and people trying to make money with stuff. But the tech itself is an immutable data storage that people can't tamper with.
Cool. Do you know how much money would it take to actually convert federal budgetary policy into a blockchain? Because, like you said, converted into a hash means it'll be like a program of some kind, right? And it's going to have to be implementing stuff from every different government agency from every part of the country. It seems like a very big process to be able to accomplish that.
Well, it really wouldn't be that. I mean, the hardest thing would be finding the actual systems and getting access to them, because there's a lot of systems in a lot of different places that nobody even knows about. But a lot of the funding and things like that, all of those are forms that get filled out, right? Your budgets, you sign them, you submit them up to your bosses for approval. I mean, that's all easy to have in a workflow on blockchain and capture it, just at the budget level. Now, capturing all the data and stuff like that, that would be on each of the departments that were even left around. But by and large, we would probably have to get rid of quite a bit of. I mean, there's a lot of agencies now, like the ATF. Yeah, I'd scratch them too. We've already talked about the IRS. Homeland Security, the good thing they got going for them is the Coast Guard, but the Coast Guard can go back under DOD like it does under times of war. So there's a lot of things there.
A few people in the chat have mentioned that blockchains can be hacked with a 51% attack. Proof of the stake chains have the same trust problems of normal ledgers. I don't know what that means, but I assume you do.
Yeah. And basically what that's saying is that depending on how many nodes, if you're able to compromise 51% of them, then you could hack the chain. But at this point in time, unless you have a quantum computer, I don't think it's even possible, but that's in theory a practice. I don't know if anyone's actually ever pulled it off.
Gotcha. Tell me more what you do about the voting system, because you said you would reform voting to try and get it off of the two-party system. How would you do that?
With ranked choice voting, one of the things that as a third-party candidate, people are like, hey, I like your ideas. I'd vote for you, but I don't want to waste my vote, right? This election's too important. So then they go with the guy they think they can tolerate versus the guy they like, just so that they don't get the guy that they hate. Right? So I'm in the middle, kind of on both parties. Some of my ideas Republicans like, some of my ideas Democrats like. I don't lean any one of their directions because I think they both suck. But when we have the ranked choice voting, you can then pick the candidate that you like. But then you can also put your second and third choice, right? And so that second, if that third party candidate doesn't make it, doesn't get enough votes, he's off, and then all of that second vote goes to that candidate. So it gives other parties outside the Republican and the Democrat a way to still reach their voters without them feeling like they're wasting a vote. I think they've done it in Maine successfully. I think they've done it in Oregon, or we're at least talking about it. So it's starting to catch on, but I'd like to see it go nationwide.
Do they have multiple parties in Maine and Oregon successfully that have broken the bipartisan grip on things?
There's a Libertarian up there somewhere, but I think he was elected as a Republican.
Gotcha. So what other do you think are the most important issues that we can change to make a difference for bettering America?
Well, I mean, I guess the big ones are just redefining our criminal justice system. I mean, that's something that removing the responsibility of some of those police officers doing things that are unconstitutional. I mean, most of vehicle searches, you can't ever tell me that they can circumvent vehicle searches by having a dog bark, right? Do you know that dogs only hit drugs like 10% of the time? The others is just them barking. So they're using that as a way to like break into your cars. No, that should not be their job, right? Their job should be enforcing the laws and not sitting there trying to kick in doors trying to find what else little Johnny's doing. If you see little Johnny speeding, give little Johnny a ticket, but don't sit there and then try to put little Johnny under the bus because your dog barked. But a lot of that, once you legalize it, you're going to take away some of that. But our whole system is so racially biased, and I'm white and I know it. It's just the way it's always been. So that would be the first angle of attack. Before we even talk about taxes and anything like that, it's stop messing with the Constitution, stop messing with the people, and then let's start downsizing the IRS. It's probably 1, 2, and 3. Get rid of the drug war, get rid of the IRS, and be better to people would be my top 3 things.
Be better to people. That's a good one. I like that. Question from Vlad. He asks, what is your view on January 6th?
Well, I actually watched January 6th the first time with popcorn, and I watched it all day. I definitely think Trump was a cheerleader there. I didn't watch any of the hearing, so I'm only going off of what I saw those live events. I knew he was up in his office. I could just imagine him just having a good old time with it. But these are all things that I already knew about. I don't like Trump as a person, but to be honest with you, I hate Biden even more now. Now, I like a lot of his ideas, but the January 6th thing to me was, I like that people felt like they were doing something right, because if it was legit, I want to see that from my fellow Americans. But it wasn't legit, right? It was all just the Trump smoke and mirrors and stuff that he's always done. And it infuriated people into a riot. I think that was bad. But storming a Capitol in general, I don't necessarily think it's bad if we're not getting the attention of our government. I would not have been, well, I wasn't there. I didn't think going was a good idea.
Cool. Do you think, how can you get people more inspired to be able to try and make a difference in politics? Because you're right that they were very inspired to try to make a difference, if not the most positive way, but the ability to get people inspired is a very useful thing that we just don't have. Most people aren't very inspired. Most people, a large portion of America doesn't go out to vote. How would you inspire people to become more engaged in politics?
Well, I've been lucky enough to have met people who said that I've never voted until I met you. So I think a lot of it is just the personal message. Like when I'm going around North Carolina, I'm really more talking about their personal freedom and, making sure that the government's not overreaching and, their Second Amendment. And then that's when I find out if they're Republican or Democrat. But everybody else actually, when you talk about your personal freedom, be able to make the choices you want inside your home and be left alone, you start with that, everybody's on board. It's just when you start adding all the other nuances that I don't even think matter. We shouldn't have laws at the federal level that say what we can and cannot do. The federal government, as stated in the Constitution, its only job is to protect us. Right? We could have private industry take care of everything else.
Would you be for offering private companies ways to compete with federal programs like healthcare, housing, UPS?
Healthcare, absolutely. Housing, absolutely. Because I think they can do it cheaper. I mean, when you actually look at the price tags that the government's paying for stuff, it's not like the government's getting a deal and it's cheaper for us for them to do it when private industry can actually do it. Let's take in fact of Elon Musk, right? NASA. They're working for decades trying to do something. Elon didn't know anything about rockets. He's like, hey, you know what? Let's just start from scratch. So he's more efficient, cheaper, and now he's the way to go.
I disagree with you on that one. Oh, so I'm pretty familiar with NASA and the Elon Musk budgetary spending. Like NASA is spending more on Elon than doing it themselves. It's a big
are they really?
Yeah, it's Elon Musk's model is not efficient.
Well, so I know he can't build a car either. So, but I was at least impressed with his rockets. But look, when you see those rockets come back and they land vertically straight up, that's oppressive. I saw that, and I'm not necessarily a big Elon fan, but when I saw that, I definitely respected what he accomplished.
For sure. It's definitely an impressive thing. It's cool. It's very cool. The space tourism is very cool. Very expensive, but very cool.
It would be the only. That's one of the only things on my bucket list that, unless someone gets us up there, I'll never get to scratch off.
For sure. Well, we've been going for about an hour. I really appreciate you coming on. It was a great conversation. Do you want to give people any links or references where they can find more about your work?
Oh, sure. I'm pretty much on Twitter 24 hours a day. You can follow me there at Shannon Bray, BRAY NC for North Carolina. So it's at Shannon Bray NC. And if pop any questions are there, I'm fairly responsive. And I love to talk just about everything. I have an opinion on everything. So with that, I appreciate everyone stopping in and checking it out.
Awesome. Also, I tweeted it, our conversation on there. So give me a retweet if you can.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. It was great having you on. Really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Great. It's nice talking to you.